The new Fever case introduced the shattered web knives with chroma finishes, so things like this are now possible, and they look absolutely fantastic. I mean, just look at it. But as it turns out, they are completely broken. This video was sponsored by SkinsMonkey, the best CS2 trading site with the lowest fees out there. My favorite feature is that they don't charge any overpay for low floats, so for example, this 0.09 Zeus Dragon Snore costs exactly the same as the bad float ones. You can get up to $5 for free on your first trade if you use code TECHSAVVY, and after about 5 minutes, I managed to find this trade for my Glock Axia for the low float Dragon Snore and a StatTrak Minimal AK Slate. I actually made $6.90 on this trade. If you're just a little bit short on your balance, don't worry, because again, using code TECHSAVVY, you get a 35% deposit bonus. Even if you don't have any skins, they're constantly running 3 giveaways that you can enter without trading or spending any money. Thanks again to SkinsMonkey for sponsoring this video. Go check them out. There will be a link in the description in the pinned comment. This case contains the shattered web knives, so the knife models are the survival knife, the skeleton knife, the paracord knife, and the nomad knife, and they come in the chroma finishes. So that's the tiger tooth, the rust coat, the marble fade, the Doppler, the ultraviolet, and the Damascus steel. This gives us 24 different kinds of knives, and you may think that you have the same odds of getting each of these. And in the case of the Spectrum case, for example, that is indeed the case. You're equally as likely to get a Huntsman Knife Marble Fade as to get a Bowie Knife Ultraviolet, and you're also equally likely to get the Butterfly Knife Doppler. However, within the Dopplers, there are of course multiple phases. There are phase 1, 2, 3, and 4, and there are the 3 Doppler gems, Ruby, Sapphire, and Black Pearl. Phases 1 through 4 are equally likely, but they are way more likely to drop than the Ruby, the Sapphire, and what's even more rare is the Black Pearl. The 3 gems make up approximately 10% of all Dopplers, so that leaves around 20% or so for each of the phases. And this is of course by design. For example, if we take a look at the price of a Butterfly Knife Ruby, you'll see that the cheapest factory new is $16,000, but if you just take a look at a regular Doppler, so whichever phase is the cheapest, that is as cheap, in quotation marks, as $3,300. So it's by design that the gems that look better are rarer, and both of these factors increase their prices. Now this is where things get interesting. As Flary pointed out in a tweet, there seem to be a lot more Doppler gems of the new knives than anything else out there. So I had to investigate. I loaded up the CS Float database and I simply sorted by newest ID, and I also restricted everything to the covert rarity, and this is what I see. Now I started scrolling down until I saw something that looks like this, where it says unknown and a star. This is because CS Float hasn't loaded up all the items into its database, but it still registered them. It just doesn't really know what items there are. So if I click inspect on this knife, you'll see that this is a phase 1 survival knife Doppler. So I took note of what this knife is. I went back to the database. I kept scrolling. Here we go. Here's another knife. I know it's a knife because of the star. Let's inspect it. And this one is a skeleton sapphire. So I kept doing this, and I went down thousands and thousands of items until I didn't see any more unknown items. This is where I roughly knew that it was all the knives that have been registered so far. So let's take a look at what I found. So out of all the knives, 2 of them were tiger tooths, only 1 was a marble fade, 3 were rust coats, 1 was a Damascus steel, and 4 were ultraviolets. These so far honestly seem pretty normal. It's not a lot of knives, so a little bit of variation is expected, but things get really interesting when we get into the Dopplers. In total, so combining all phases and all gems, there are 31 Dopplers, and things get even crazier when you break it down by the phases and gems. There was only 1 phase 1, there were 2 phase 2s, 6 phase 3s, 3 phase 4s, 7 sapphires, 7 rubies, and 5 black pearls. That is ridiculous. Over half of them were gems. Now I know that if you get a gem, you are more likely to register it on CS Float, but I honestly don't think that's too big of an effect, and the numbers are just kind of crazy. Like, there's no way a black pearl is 5 times as common as a phase 1 when it should in theory have like a 20 or 30 times lower chance of dropping. I do have a theory on what's happening though. I think that Valve made a coding error, and it is not unprecedented. I'll expand on that in a little bit. And I think that each phase and each gem counts as an extra finish. So I think it's most likely that you have the same odds of getting, for example, a sapphire as the odds to get a phase 1, which is the same odds to get a marble fade, a rust coat, and a Damascus steel. This obviously makes the gems way more common than intended, which I think is gonna be really bad if it stays this way. Do you think Valve is gonna fix this soon? Let me know in the comments down below. I really hope Valve fixes this, because if they don't, the gems just aren't gonna be as cool because they're gonna be way too common. And the reason I think this is the case is because something really similar actually already happened. Remember the Glock Gamma Doppler? Back in Operation Riptide when it first dropped, it of course had the 4 phases in the emerald, and while opening them had the correct odds, so you were way less likely to get the emerald than each of the phases, if you traded up to them, you had the exact same odds to get each of the phases and the emerald, as well as the M4 Coalition, which was the other red in the collection. And they haven't fixed it. That is still the case, so you still have a 1 in 6 chance to get an emerald if you do a Train 2021 collection trade up. So I don't know, this is not looking good for the Doppler gems on the Shattered Web Knives. Valve, please fix. Oh, and if this is you and you opened a Doppler gem, you did get something that's quite rare, but it's not as rare as you thought.